Did you know that Ohio and Michigan once fought a war over who would get Toledo? I'm 14 miles south of Adrian, Michigan in Fulton County, Ohio, at a place called Phillips Corners where one battle in that war took place. But wait, I thought it happened in Lenawee. Well, it is, and it did. Find out how it all went down in today's episode of It Happened in Lenawee, Toledo War Edition. Okay, so the words war and battle are an exaggeration, but it was very serious business back in 1835. Well, what was the fight about? To find out, we have to go all the way back to 1787, before either Ohio or Michigan became states. That was the year the United States passed a law called the Northwest Ordinance that created the Northwest Territory. The Northwest Territory was about where Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota are today. Congress, which is the branch of government that makes the laws, said that the territory would be divided into 3 to 5 states. The border for the northern group of states would start at the most southern point of Lake Michigan and go east until it ran into Lake Erie. Unfortunately, the maps of the time were not very good. When Ohio was working on becoming a state in 1803, they put it into their laws that the border for Ohio had to include all of Maumee Bay at Toledo. The difference between what the U.S. Congress said was the border and what Ohio said was the border was 8 miles on the eastern side. The difference added up to 468 square miles. It became known as the Toledo Strip. So why was such a small piece of land so important? The answer is this: the port of Toledo. Most people at the time traveled and shipped their goods by boat, which is why both Michigan and Ohio wanted Toledo to be part of their state. It was a very important port. Eventually, canals would be built that would connect the area to the Ohio River near Cincinnati, and from there to the Mississippi River. This would be good for traveling and for buying and selling the things that people needed. So, in 1803, Ohio became a state, hoping that the border they wanted would become the official one. They wanted the U.S. Congress to do an official survey, but for various reasons they didn't. Between 1803 and 1835, both Michigan and Ohio had land surveys done. A land survey is where people called surveyors take exact measurements of the land to set the boundaries. Ohio had William Harris run a survey in 1816, and Michigan had John Fulton run one in 1818. Not surprisingly, the surveyors' results agreed with what each state that hired them wanted. Fast forward to 1834, when Michigan wanted to go from being a territory to becoming a state. They finally had enough people to do that. The Michiganders insisted that the original definition of the border, the one described in the Northwest Ordinance, was the right one. The Michigan governor even made a law called the Pains and Penalties Act, saying that if anyone in the disputed area did any official business, that is, government stuff, without permission from either Michigan or the federal government, they would have to pay a fine, go to jail, or both. Well, this did not sit well with Ohio. Ohio decided to do yet another survey to reinforce what the Harris survey had said. This was a violation of Michigan's Pains and Penalties Act, so Michigan sent men to look for the Ohio surveyors. They were going to arrest them when they found them. In April 1835, the surveyors from Ohio had worked their way across the territory to property in Lenawee County owned by Colonel Eli Phillips. It was called, appropriately enough, Phillips Corners. The sheriff of Lenawee County went there with a group of men he had deputized. That meant they had the power to enforce Michigan laws, including being able to arrest anyone who needed to be arrested. A group like this is called a posse. The sheriff and his posse found the group of surveyors and moved in to arrest them. What happened next depends on which side is telling the story. According to the Ohio commissioners and surveyors, the Michigan men shot at the Ohio men as they tried to escape. According to the Michigan men, they shot over the heads of the Ohio men as they ran. The Michiganders caught up with the Ohioans in the nearby woods and arrested them. They took 9 men back to the Lenawee County Jail in Tecumseh. Yes, that was the entire Battle of Phillips Corners. A group of men trying to arrest another group of men who tried to escape but were caught and arrested anyways. It was also the only battle of the Toledo War. In any case, the issue of where the border between Michigan and Ohio was had to be resolved before Michigan could become a state. It got so bad between the two that Ohio even went so far as to try and convince other states to keep Michigan from becoming a state. In the end, though, it was politics that decided the outcome. The President of the United States at the time, Andrew Jackson, needed Ohio's votes in the upcoming presidential election. In order to try and persuade Ohio to cast their votes in his favor, Jackson had to convince Michigan to give in to Ohio's wishes. He told Michigan they would get the rest of the Upper Peninsula that wasn't already part of Michigan, plus $400,000 if they would give up the Toledo Strip. It worked. Michigan took the deal and became the 26th state on January 26, 1837. All that fighting was pointless, really. The canals weren't as important as people thought they'd be because by that time the railroad companies were building rail lines into Michigan and Ohio. Ohio got the port of Toledo, but Michigan got the better part of the deal. The Upper Peninsula has copper and iron mines that would be very, very valuable to Michigan. If you want to know more about the Toledo War, read this book, The Toledo War, The First Michigan-Ohio Rivalry, by Don Faber. Thanks for watching.